And I say, well, I bet you that would have better suspension than one of these buses.
It got a lot of attention, Sabrina, no matter how they timed it. And the announcement was that the United States is sending cluster bombs to Ukraine. These
I don't want to hear about no bombs.
That are banned by treaty by more than 100 countries, including many of our closest allies, Britain, France, Germany. And you know, Sabrina, I think this was Joe Biden's biggest moral struggle of his presidency, certainly of the 500
even bigger than Hunter's crack.
Since the war in Ukraine broke out with the Russian invasion. And exactly because it was such a big moral struggle, many of his advisors tried to put this day off and put it off and put it off again until they hit the point where they had no choice.
Okay, so David, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the Biden decision. But before we do that, let's discuss the weapons themselves. What are they, and how did they come to be seen as so beyond the pale by such a large part of the world?
Sabrina, a cluster bomb is really a series of bombs all packed together. Think of it as a single bomb that's full of individual hand grenades. These bombs literally have bomblets in them. And as it comes down, instead of landing in a single place the way a conventional artillery round might, it shoots these bomblets over this area that could be 3 or 4 football fields.
Ooh,
Huge area, and then they go off and send essentially shrapnel all over the place. And so a cluster bomb can kill or maim a huge number of people, or stop a run of armored personnel carriers or tanks over a wide area of the battlefield in a very short period of time.
That's what we need them for.
For a shotgun, except all the individual pellets themselves explode.
That's absolutely right.
So, David, tell me the history of these weapons. When were they first used?
Their history really goes back to World War II. It was the Soviets who first used to airdrop these cluster munitions. At the time, they called them butterfly bombs. But their really big use came during the Vietnam War, when the Pentagon had manufactured thousands and thousands of these and used them in Vietnam, in the secret war in Cambodia, and used them in Laos. And the problem is, for as long as there have been cluster bombs, there have been duds. That is to say, a bomblet that doesn't explode and lands somewhere and just sits there. Then it goes off, maybe years after the conflict is over. The International Committee of the Red Cross has estimated that in Laos alone there are 9 to 27 million unexploded bomblets, and that they killed or maimed 11,000 people. And many of those, of course, were children.
Right. These mini grenades can lie around, and a kid can pick them up and start playing with them and lose his hands.
Or far worse.
And that is the tragic thing about cluster bombs, right? It's something that I saw in Lebanon in 2006. The Israelis were using them extensively in that conflict, and I remember being at hospitals and seeing mothers looking at their children who'd lost legs, who'd lost arms, who'd lost eyes by picking these things up thinking that they were toys.
That's right, and it's incredibly tragic.
Well, it's in Russia. They started this shit.
Yep, that's why they need the cluster bombs, because
Throw them in the damn trenches.
But you know what?
Yep.
Militaries kept using them, and they kept using them because they were incredibly effective at what they did. And so they were used not only in Lebanon, you know, where you were, Sabrina, but the U.S. used them in Iraq, used them in Kosovo, and then many other smaller powers began making them themselves. They're not especially difficult to manufacture. So they've been used in small conflicts around the world with increasing frequency.
So, David, when do Western militaries stop using them? When does a movement to ban them kind of gather force?
Well, the movement gathered force after the but it really accelerated after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when it no longer seemed to make sense even for big powers like the United States to be keeping these, because they have been central to the planning in Europe about how you would stop a Soviet invasion of Europe. You know, that you would use these cluster bombs against forces that were coming through the Fulda Gap in Germany and use them to protect Europe. But once the Cold War seemed to be over, everybody thought, no one really needs these anymore.
Right.
So by 2008, there was a UN-organized convention on cluster munitions that countries began to sign. And many of America's closest allies signed it on the first day. Now, among those that held out were the United States, Russia, and China.
And remind us, David, why the U.S. did not sign.
For the same reason, Sabrina, that they didn't sign another treaty back in the 1990s, the much better known Landmine Treaty. That treaty was meant to ban the use of landmines because farmers, children, lots of people step on old landmines. And the United States didn't sign it because the Pentagon concluded that they were vital in one part of the world, the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, where landmines were then and still today are the main defense from having the North Koreans come over and invade the South. So on the cluster bomb, Sabrina, the Pentagon had a very similar argument. They said, hey, we're the policemen of the world. There may be...
Which, why are we?
Why are we?
Yes.
That's right.
Why are we? Fuck everybody else. Right, Daddy?
Yep, I agree, Joe.
I got my 2 floss picks that...
You get to drop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Daddy.
Yes, Joe.
You know they train teams of rats to detect unexploded ordnances?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know rats were that capable.
They are. They're geniuses.
Are they?
Yes. There's also this lady who has for some reason, I don't know why she doesn't have a dog, but she has like 2 rats that alert her when she's about to have a seizure.
Stop that.
I don't.
Get it out of the way. I gotta go through.
I don't know why she has rats, but hey, they could do that too.
Well, I guess she just wants to have rats.
Yeah, they look like little chihuahuas, actually.
Really? There must be some big ass rats.
That's what they feel like. I said little chihuahuas. Not full-size chihuahuas. I know. But smaller than a chihuahua, but the same type of fur.